Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am from Missouri, so you did pronounce that properly. I appreciate the vernacular there. I appreciate you all taking the time this morning. I know this is a busy conference. I know getting here at 9 a.m. when you're still setting up next door is a bit of an ask. And so I promise over the next 30 minutes, we're going to give you a really exciting overview of what we see as sustainability opportunities within Goodyear. So we're going to talk about a few technical topics. I promise not to dive too deep. I'm going to actually give a little bit of a nod to a couple of sessions tomorrow that I'm hoping to drive some traffic to. And so we'll really deep dive some of the technical analysis of those projects in those sessions. But I do want to talk about what sustainability means at Goodyear and how we think about the intersection of sustainability and technology to advance our broader corporate ambitions. And so let me just go through the agenda quickly. Quick drive on this slide. Again, we're going to talk about sustainability. I really want to deep dive on our decarbonization strategies and our circularity strategies. So we'll talk about that in some detail. That's going to lead us into a discussion around advanced mobility and how we see tires enabling the transformation of what we understand as our transportation industry today. And then we're going to finish off with a few notes on collaboration. This is something, obviously, a journey that we can't take on our own. It takes, obviously, the engagement and the innovation of 70,000 employees across Goodyear, but beyond our four walls, it takes key partners to help us unlock potential in some of these technologies that we see emerging. So with that, let me just talk through, first of all, every company kind of defines sustainability a little bit differently. The way we define it at Goodyear is, if you look across the top there, responsibly balancing our environmental, social, and financial demands without compromising the ability of our future generations to meet their needs. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is continue to reduce the impact of our design, our manufacturing, and the use of our products to drive sustainability throughout the entire value chain of a tire. And so you can see in the middle there our Better Future framework. A couple of things I'll navigate, promise not to go through every detail there, but important to understand and ground yourselves around where we focus. So if you kind of follow the outer circle, you can see that we start with sustainable sourcing. And so that's looking for partners, suppliers, partners out in the space that share our values for sustainable development and are partnering with us to reduce their footprint, reduce our footprint, and continue to innovate for advancements in this industry. We also obviously focus on our responsible operations. So how do we impact sustainability within our four walls, whether that's through product design, manufacturing for sustainability, how do we deal with waste within our operations, how do we ensure that we are supporting the social advancement of our workforce as well. And so, of course, we're very focused on that. As I mentioned a second ago, we're also very focused on advanced mobility and how Goodyear can play a key role in transformation of this industry. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. And then finally, and certainly last but not least, is inspiring culture. As I mentioned, we have 70,000 employees worldwide. It's imperative that we're engaging with our associates, understanding their challenges, helping them unlock opportunities within the work that they do every day that can continue to advance our strategies. So really, really important that we're kind of keeping a core focus. Now, what I want to talk about today is what's in the middle. And like I said, we're going to focus on the top two. So as we go through assessment of what Goodyear's impacts are, it's important for us to know what's material, right? What's high priority? What do our stakeholders value? What are consumers looking for, et cetera? And so you can see we have four key focus areas: decarbonization, adaptation, and resiliency to climate change, which we'll talk a little bit about today. Circularity, which of course we'll talk about. We obviously focus on human and labor rights. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the discussion today, but we will, just got a little pop up there. We will talk a little bit about how we impact that. And then of course, how we partner with our supply chain. Goodyear, many tire manufacturers have a really complex supply chain. And so it's important for us to understand where these raw materials are coming from, what are the various impacts that these products are driving within the broader ecosystem, and how can we partner to ensure that we're reducing those impacts. So let's get into the meat of the conversation here. Oh, we froze up. So how do we hold ourselves accountable? Those are all really great things to talk about, but obviously what gets measured gets done, right? And so at Goodyear, we have a number of corporate responsibility ambitions. We also maybe call them our bold goals if you've read our sustainability report. And so the way that we do this is we put out public ambitions. Most companies of our size do. And I've got a sampling of kind of the key sustainability ambitions that you can see up top. I'll just kind of do a quick drive through a couple that I want to call out. One on the short term on the top left, you can see that by 2025, we have a target of reducing rolling resistance by 40%, and reducing our tire weight by 9% based on a 2005 baseline. So I'll talk about the progress we're making and why that's important. We also have a target by 2027 to reinvent tires and service, delivering data and sensor-enabled intelligence in all of our new products. We'll talk in a moment about why that's so important and where we think we can unlock potential for our customers. And then, of course, we have targets around our carbon emissions, and we'll hit that in the next section, where we focus on reducing our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 46% by 2030, and our Scope 3 emissions, certain categories, by 28% over that same time frame, with an ultimate vision of achieving net zero by 2050. So there's a lot of work that we have executed on, and we'll talk about some of the opportunities and challenges we see ahead. And then long-term goals, just a couple more to call out. You can see in the bottom left there, by 2040, we have a goal of fully replacing petroleum-derived oils in our products. I think we can all appreciate how significant that ambition is. That's a pretty important component of tire manufacturing, and so we're really challenging ourselves to think differently about what those raw materials are. And so beyond that, I think we'll go ahead and move into, I want to kind of show you how we're progressing against these ambitions, and that'll set the stage for what's to come. So if we want to roll the video.
2023 was a year of progress, one where we remained steadfast to our commitment to sustainability and delivering value for all our stakeholders.
Each year, we share a complete overview of our sustainability journey in our corporate responsibility report. We also share the strategies we have in place and the steps we are taking to help us achieve our sustainability goals. For example, 2023 was a year in which we reduced our Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions by nearly 22%, moving us closer to achieving our goal of net zero value chain emissions by 2050.
We also continue to use sustainable materials and introduce new technologies and innovation. From launching the Eco-Ready, a consumer tire in the United States made with 70% sustainable materials, to working with OEMs and autonomous vehicle companies to implement tire intelligence, we are not just making a difference, we are changing mobility.
We continue to act on our commitment to sourcing in a way that helps reduce both environmental and social impacts. We explored new processes and technologies to enhance our supply chain traceability, engaging our suppliers, and working with our industry partners to strengthen our strategies.
We also continue to invest in our associates, enabling them to reach their full potential. From helping associates lead teams in an evolving environment, to expanding our mentoring programs, to seeing a 15% growth in ERG membership, it is evident that we are fostering an inspiring and inclusive culture.
We also took the time to give back to the communities where we live and work. Team Goodyear logged more than 13,400 volunteer hours in 2023, and we saw a 20% year-over-year increase in associate involvement in our Global Week of Volunteering.
As we always do, we set the bar high, but if the progress we made in 2023 is any indication, I am confident that Team Goodyear will achieve our short and long-term sustainability goals.
Okay, excellent. So great look back at what we've accomplished so far. And we're obviously very proud of our accomplishments, but important to note that we are very aware of what the opportunities are ahead of us and what some of those challenges are. And so just one more grounding slide for you to think about. When we think about our impact and how we drive sustainability at Goodyear, we look at the entire value chain of a tire, or a life cycle, if you will, of a tire. So you can see kind of the carbon impacts throughout the life cycle of a tire. Obviously, something that probably stands out to you is that the use phase, or emissions from a vehicle, we're obviously using an ICE vehicle as our example here, but emissions from the use phase of a vehicle is the primary impact of a tire's life within the entire value chain. And so we'll talk today about how we impact each value chain and where our strategic priorities are, and what are some of the technologies that we're deploying to help reduce our overall impact. So let's deep dive into decarbonization. Just a quick grounding. I'm not sure if everyone's a carbon accounting nerd like I am, but just for grounding, Scope 1 carbon emissions are our direct emissions coming from our factories. So think about we burn natural gas to fire steam boilers. The emissions from that natural gas is obviously Scope 1. Scope 2, think pretty easily electricity that we purchase off of the grid. And then Scope 3 is everything outside of our operations. So that's emissions coming from our raw materials, emissions coming from transport, emissions coming from use phase of our products, and then end of life treatment of our products. Those are all Scope 3 emissions that we're targeting as well. So just quick grounding as I show you this, this eye chart. So this is our decarbonization roadmap. A couple things that are really interesting I want to call out. One, you can see kind of how we step our way into 2050. It's a broad ambition that we have a lot of work to achieve to get to. And so we really focus on how are we delivering results now against our 2030 ambitions, and then building capability to be able to execute on our 2050 ambitions. And so you can see here, we're obviously focused in some key areas. So if you look through the middle around our emissions footprint, to be able to achieve our 2030 science-based targets, as well as our ambition to produce our products using 100% renewable electricity in our manufacturing by 2030. We're also targeting using 100% renewable energy, so that includes those Scope 1 fuels in our manufacturing by 2040. All of that sets us up for Scope 1 and 2 decarbonization. And then implementing on top of that is then our Scope 3 decarbonization strategy. So just a couple to call out. So one, we're obviously very focused on the energy that we're using. We're focusing on switching all of our electricity to renewable sources. Some of the technology that continues to be unlocked but needs to see further advancement is reliability of grid electricity, continuing to bring in more renewable sources, efficiency of transmission. Think about all of the organizations like Goodyear that have these ambitions. Think about all of the kind of AI data centers that are coming live, and the increased and really incredibly increased demand for electricity becomes a bit of a challenge when you're thinking about how you're decarbonizing your footprint. So unlocking potential in that industry is going to be really key for organizations like Goodyear to be able to transition to 100% renewable electricity. Other transition points that we're focused on, obviously, as we think about the fuels that we use, how do we either switch those processes that maybe are steam generated, switch them to an electrified process so that we can start to leverage some of that renewable electricity? How do we think about bio-based fuels? How do we think about recycled fuels? And then ultimately, how do we think about clean sources of fuels like a clean hydrogen as a potential? So that's all work that we're doing now to build capability for 2040 and beyond, while we're focused very heavily right now on reducing our footprint through energy efficiency, electrification of processes, increased renewable electricity generation, et cetera. So that's where we're really focused on Scope 1 and 2. Now, Scope 3, which I think is particularly interesting for this crew, when we think about Scope 3, you can see 55% purchased goods and services. So 55% of our global footprint comes from the products that we buy from suppliers and partners. And that brings unique challenges, right? So it's already hard enough to decarbonize your own footprint. Partnering with thousands of suppliers to continue to decarbonize their footprint is a major ask, right? And that's a major unlock for the organization. So think about three key levers when we're working on decarbonizing our supply chain. One is partnering with suppliers that we go back to the sustainable sourcing, right? Partnering with suppliers that share our values for sustainable development. They have their own decarbonization strategies. They're partnering with us to set their targets that we then, of course, can leverage their progress as part of our decarbonization. So that's lever one with our existing supply base. Lever two, think about, the carbonization, the carbon footprint comes from the product that you're buying. Very easy math. Buy less product, emit less carbon. So one of our key strategies that we'll talk about in the next section is dematerialization. How do you do more with less material? How do you bring in more circular concepts, be able to reduce that carbon footprint of the products that we provide? And then the last lever that we're pulling, and we'll talk about that in a couple slides as well, is finding innovation or innovative partnerships. We have a couple of partners sitting up front here, the Monolith crew. I think you've all seen their name around this conference. We'll talk about our partnership there, but where we think about this opportunity is how do we move away from some of the more traditional raw materials that we might use in tire manufacturing and think about bio-based, more sustainable, lower carbon footprint replacement products that can either, certainly at a minimum, meet our current safety and performance standards, but in some cases, and we'll share that with you, we're actually seeing some opportunities to unlock additional performance enhancements on top of our decarbonization. So really, really exciting stuff. There is a lot to go through. And so we've just kind of pulled out a few key topics for you to think about how we're bringing this to life at Goodyear. So some of the challenges, I've talked through a lot of this. I think I won't drain this slide, but as you can imagine, partnering with a number of suppliers, a number of individuals like yourselves, the scientific community to figure out how to unlock some of these strategies is a key challenge for us. And certainly it becomes an opportunity as we think about how do we drive more efficiency in our processes, use less energy, use less material, use alternative forms of material that can unlock decarbonization strategies. And so those are some key areas that we're really focused on. We've talked about fuel switching, and we've talked about expanding our use of low greenhouse gas products. Now, with all of that said, when you think about, so our next topic around circularity, the best way in my mind to define circularity is to define the opposite of that. And so when you think about a linear economy literally means you are extracting a raw material, you are running it through manufacturing, you are putting it out to the market for use. It is disposed of in a non-beneficial way at the end of its life, right? So you buy something, you use it, you throw it in the landfill. That's a linear economy. You can think about the strain on natural resources, the strain on energy consumption. That is a significant opportunity that the industry is looking at. And so when we think about circularity, at Goodyear, we define it a few ways, right? So first of all, we try to unpack it pretty simply so that like my mind can unpack it. But we really look at the inflow of materials into the production of a tire and then the outflow of materials. And then how does that create a cradle to gate or a cradle to grave life cycle for the materials that we're producing? So when we think about inflow, traditionally at Goodyear, we've been focused on identifying sources of renewable raw materials, recycled raw materials. So think about recycled plastic bottles, think about other recycled steel maybe that comes into the tire production, all of those kinds of sources. Bio-based materials, we'll give a couple of examples in a moment. And how do we just continue to reduce the impact of products going into our tire? Then, where we're really focusing now is how do we then unlock the potential at the end or the outflow of a tire? So how do we create end-of-life tire solutions that can either provide tire-to-tire circularity, and that's a huge opportunity we see in the market. How do we think about end-of-life tire solutions that create a value stream or like new raw materials for other industries? And then how do we think more about designing our products for retreadability, long life, continuing to increase tread life to make sure that we're getting the maximum amount of performance out of the materials and the processes that we're putting out in the environment. So huge opportunity when we think about circularity. And I think one other thing I want to say before I move next, when you think about the intersection of decarbonization or climate and circularity, it's really a Venn diagram. And what I mean by that is you can decarbonize or find lower carbon footprint products that are not inherently circular, right? They're just kind of a use and dispose. You can also find highly circular materials that don't actually reduce your carbon footprint. And so for, obviously as you're thinking about where you're putting your investments, our priority at Goodyear is to think about what are those solutions or technologies that fit that Venn diagram that help us unlock both of those challenges for our organization. So why is circularity important? I've talked a lot about it, but a few things that I just want to call out here. Obviously, as we're focusing on renewable, recycled, bio-based materials, that's helping us work into more of an economy where we can actually continue to grow raw material versus relying on a kind of a finite resource. Obviously, we talked about tire longevity. The longer you can use that product or retread that product and continue to use the carcass, the lower your overall circularity impact is. So that's a huge opportunity for us, especially as we think about our partnership with some of our fleet customers. Continuing to get life out of their investment is really, really critical to their value proposition. And then last is tire weight. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but again, as you continue to take materials out, less consumption, less greenhouse gas emissions. We also produce less tires or less material within our tires, and that helps us actually generate less waste within our manufacturing processes. So all in, pretty big win-win. also a really good financial sustainability strategy for our organization as well. So the challenge is, how do you make a tire that does the same or better? And certainly in many of these cases, these tires are performing better. How do you do that in a way that helps you save resources, reduce carbon, and create a positive financial impact for your organization? So a couple of examples. Let's get into the fun stuff, into the meat. So as we look at the inflow or circularity inflow strategy, you can kind of work left to right in our timeline. Obviously, as we march towards that 2030 goal of reducing our carbon footprint, providing the world's first 100% sustainable material tire. Those are all of our ambitions that we're working ourselves towards. So a couple of key initiatives that we've launched. We obviously, so actually the number is 2015. I've got the wrong date on here, but in 2015, we actually started partnering to use rice husk ash silica. Say that slowly. So instead of using your traditional sand-based silica, we actually are able to use what would be a waste stream. So the husk is just disposed of at the end of rice production. And so we're able to use that waste stream. It's a recycled material that's coming back in as a raw material for our tires. Obviously, we need to be very conscious of it not competing with any kind of a food source. And so we have a number of controls in place to ensure that we're sustainably sourcing that material. But that's a big unlock for us when we think about a renewable resource that is recycled, and we are diverting that from a waste stream. Another really interesting technology that we've unlocked at Goodyear is the use, we were the first commercial users of soybean oil in our tread compound. So that's another good bio-based material that you can think about. Not only does it perfectly replace petroleum oil, but we actually see some performance enhancements in cold environments using soybean oil in our tread compounds. So another example of, hey, we're doing the right thing for the environment. We feel really good about this, but it's actually unlocking performance potential for our customers as well. So I won't drive through this entire slide, but just a couple other key notable points that I want to brag about, and I did none of this work, but the team really has done an incredible job bringing out a few things. So in 2022, we launched a 70% sustainable material demonstration tire just to test that we can do it, understand what that capability needs to be, and what are those technologies that are really that are working for us. 2023 is where we came to life again with a 90% demonstration or 90% sustainable material demonstration tire, and our first commercially available launch of a 70% sustainable material tire. We call it Eco-Ready. It's available in the United States. That was an incredible transformation for how we think about bringing tires to market. We continue to innovate, so some of those strategies or technologies are deployed in our electric drive line, and we have a number of other tires that are either in the market today or coming very soon, utilizing a lot of these renewable, bio-based, low carbon footprint materials. So very exciting. Not only have we done a lot of great work to understand what it would take to make a sustainable tire, we're actually making and selling tires with high sustainable material content. And so we see that as a really, really exciting. I think the team is really proud of the work that we've done to get this to market, understand how it's performing, continue to advance in future innovations. So really great work on our inflow progress. Now, when we think about outflow, what happens at the end of the life of the tire? How do we continue to reduce tire weight, rolling resistance? You can see I mentioned earlier we have targets around tire weight and rolling resistance. We are achieving, actually exceeding our tire weight target. We've reduced our aggregate weight by 9.9%. So that's pretty significant when you think about what that means from dematerialization, carbon reduction, and fuel efficiency for vehicles. Let's point back to that use phase impact and how we can continue to reduce those emissions coming from ICE vehicles or continue to extend range for electric vehicles. And we're continuing to advance against our rolling resistance targets. We're currently at end of 23, we're at 35.5% rolling resistance reduction against that target of 40%. So making really, really good progress. We still see opportunity ahead of us, and we're going to continue to challenge ourselves. How do we just keep driving that number down and creating more efficient systems for our customers, right? That they're really relying on for both their decarbonization strategies, their fleet optimization strategies, and their, ultimately fuel use reduction strategies as well. And so we see a lot of opportunity for us to continue to bring value to our various stakeholders. So what does that all mean? I've talked a couple of times about how do we partner with customers? How do we think about a systems level approach, not just thinking, how do I reduce rolling resistance by taking tire out? How do I reduce rolling resistance by using different materials in our tread compounds, et cetera? We really have to think about how we are helping to advance the broader mobility industry through our sustainable design strategies, through systems level thinking, and how do we really unlock the intelligence that a tire can provide for transportation and mobility systems. And so we really think about that under the framework of advanced mobility, which we saw in our Better Future framework as well. And so when we talk about advanced mobility, a few things, right? We're really thinking beyond tires, right? So Goodyear is going to continue to make tires. That's obviously a core business for us, and we see extreme value in that work. But we also see real potential when you think about the tire is the only piece of the vehicle that touches the ground. And so everything happening to that vehicle, any traction that it's experiencing, any slip that it's experiencing, any potholes, damage, you name it, that tire is experiencing, we can understand that through tire intelligence and better understand what the impacts are to the life of that tire, impacts to the fuel efficiency that tire is helping to create, and really help us think differently about how we propel equipment in the future. So when we think about advanced mobility, we use the term FACES. And what that stands for is really we think about how do we partner with fleets? How do we focus on autonomous and connected vehicles? How do we think differently about the support required for electric vehicles and the opportunities involved with electric vehicles? And how does this broader approach help us drive sustainability for our customers? And so a couple of examples when we think about sustainability and kind of a key change or maybe mental shift that we've created at Goodyear is how is sustainability really a technology driver? I think that's an area where you can really find successes. It's not an and proposition. Sustainability is a technology driver in the work that you're doing. And so a few examples, we have a number, but I think some that would probably resonate with this team, and we all drive vehicles in some way. I think we're all familiar with the TPMS model, understanding your pressure within your tires. Underinflated tires we know can impact your fuel efficiency. You want to make sure that you're properly inflated. So TPMS systems, obviously very important. As we think about tire intelligence, I think you should think about like TPMS 3.0 because we're able to actually tap into that intelligence and understand and work with our fleet partners to say, hey, 30% of your tires are underinflated, and that is resulting in either excess wear of your tires, rolling resistance challenges, you're probably spending more in fuel than you need to. Here are some solutions we can partner with you on to help make your fleet more efficient. Tire wear is another area that we can detect with tire sensors. Early removal of tires due to abnormal wear, obviously significant sustainability opportunity. The longer we can keep those tires on the road, keep them getting retreaded, make sure that we're wearing evenly, the better we're doing for the environment and certainly for our customers who are looking for longer lasting products that they don't have to continue changing out. So big opportunity there. A couple of things I might not have thought about in the past is how do we monitor temperature of tires? Obviously temperature, excess heating can create situations where we've all seen trucks on the side of the road, have to pull over, get their tire changed. That's massive downtime opportunity for our customers. Obviously a safety issue as we have drivers on the side of the road. Also, obviously a major sustainability opportunity if we can maintain temperature of these tires, alert the fleet that they're in maybe a higher temperature situation. How do we get them to where they can ride those tires a little bit longer? And then we've talked a lot about it, but obviously rolling resistance, being able to monitor rolling resistance, what are we experiencing real time, is a huge opportunity. You think about your average fuel efficiency. I drive a plug-in electric or plug-in hybrid, and it tells me my range continuously, right? So it gives me immediate feedback to say, maybe don't hit the gas so hard when you're getting out of the stoplight, slow roll your way into it. That kind of intelligence, that kind of awareness of, yeah, I get 68 miles per gallon on average, but this trip was 50 because I was driving like crazy, helps me think differently about how I perform with my product. And so we see that same opportunity with tires. And so, let me go back really quick. So when we think about not only tire intelligence within the actual use phase of our tires, we also think about advanced mobility as our opportunity to design differently. So think about one of the key kind of technology unlocks that we've been really excited about. Our customers are really excited. This simulator is very fun to drive, and it's also really, really informative. So think about the From To. Originally, if you didn't have this kind of technology, you're probably working on some compounds, you're doing some trials in the lab, trying to understand what's the right mix for the tire performance that you're looking for. You're probably making some prototype tires. They may or may not have yielded what you were looking for. You may scrap those tires. You probably get to a prototype that you feel good about, maybe a few prototypes. You put them on a car. You take that car out to the test track, you drive it around, you figure out how that tire performed. All of that creates time, resource strain, material strain, sustainability opportunities, because you're making a lot of product that's not actually going out to the market. So what we're doing at Goodyear with tire technology is just, it's beyond exciting, and I'll show you in a second a couple of the really great unlocks that we found. But when we think about virtual tire development, historically, what it does for us is it is really the systematic collection of hundreds of data channels, previously available, again, only by labor-intensive actions, building a tire, using a tire, measuring a tire. We can now simulate much, if not all, of that development through our virtual tire technology. And so what does that do for us, right? It gets us to market faster. OEs are coming. They want to know what our next tire technology is. They want to put it on the next generation of their vehicle. So the faster we can get their requirements, respond, create a tire that they can put in their bid package, the better off we are getting onto that vehicle fitment. Obviously, a huge environmental opportunity, not creating all of that product, not using all of that energy, not using all of that material. Huge opportunity for us to unlock potential. And then it also helps us, create some more stability, design for manufacturing within our manufacturing processes to make sure that that is the most efficient portion of the development cycle as well. So again, we see a lot of opportunity in that type of technology. And so when we think about, the innovation space that we're really focused on, obviously we're thinking about how to bring renewable energy to our processes, how to switch into electricity out of some of those traditional fuel sources, how to work with our suppliers to reduce their footprint, use less material with the same or better performance, or partner with some unique partners that are thinking differently about how they bring products to this space with a sustainability mindset. And so I would be remiss if I did not talk about some of the collaboration that we enjoy at Goodyear. We know we can't do this alone, and it's important that we're finding those key partners. Hopefully we find some more key partners over the next couple of days to really think about how we make a tire differently and how we bring these solutions to market. And so at risk of stealing too much thunder, because there are actually 2 sessions talking about these examples tomorrow, a couple that I want to call out. And so Goodyear, as we think about natural rubber, more than 90% of the world's natural rubber is made from latex, derived from rubber trees. That's primarily sourced in, think about Southeast Asia, Western Africa, areas outside of the United States. And so Goodyear in 2022 announced a partnership with the Department of Defense, the Air Force Research Lab, Biomade, and then the Ohio-based Farm Materials, where we're trying to understand and bring to market raw material or rubber that is made out of a certain variant of dandelion. So you think about a rubber tree, about 7 years for a rubber tree before it actually yields rubber that you need in manufacturing. Generally, we think that we can harvest these dandelions every 6 months. So think about the opportunity not only from a national defense standpoint, where you're able to produce this strategic, critical raw material within the United States. It also provides us an opportunity to bring more temperate environments into rubber production. Obviously, rubber trees are more of a tropical product, and so being able to produce rubber in a rubber tree in the United States is probably not really a key opportunity. We see some really serious and exciting potential for this work that we're doing. So I think that there's some technical discussion Wednesday about the TARDIS program, where you can hear a little bit more about some of this detail. And then last, certainly not least, we've got our friends at Monolith sitting up here in the 3rd row. So if you haven't seen their name, you're going to over this conference. And again, I don't want to steal thunder. I think Wednesday at 2, I would love to see you all there. My colleague, Rob Dennis Pelcher, the Monolith team, are going to talk through the paper that we released in August that really talks about how we're really transforming the way that we bring carbon black to the tire industry. So think about carbon black, about 20% round numbers of a tire is carbon black. Tires are the number one by far user of carbon black in any kind of a carbon black industry. And traditionally, the way that carbon black is made is through combustion of a fossil fuel. So you can imagine that's a finite resource. You're not really driving circularity with that kind of solution. It also has a potentially heavy carbon footprint. And so again, you think about the from traditional carbon black manufacturing to what we're developing and partnering with Monolith on is a methane-derived carbon black. So think about, and I won't take your technology secrets, but ultimately Monolith is using a plasma technology. They're able to utilize renewable electricity to fuel their plasma solution to actually split a methane molecule. So very straightforward. You end up with carbon black, you end up with hydrogen. So they have two beneficial sources, feedstocks, if you will, that come out of their process, no generation of carbon dioxide. So really, really exciting opportunity to unlock a from to and a carbon footprint reduction that we're really, really excited about. This product is in our electric drive tire, and we're excited to continue working with Monolith to unlock more potential within our value chain. I know that one of the things that Monolith is looking at is how do we start to think about methane from waste sources, from feedstocks, et cetera, so we can really drive circularity. Obviously, we're focused on getting that technology right, but just think about what that potential is for the carbon black industry. So please go to the session Wednesday at 2. I think you're going to hear a lot more interesting technical information, but from a sustainability standpoint, this is like a CISO's dream. So we're really excited to unpack this a little bit further. So with that, aware of the time, and I want to leave a couple minutes if we do have questions, I just want to summarize a few things. So when we think about, again, our decarbonization roadmap, it's important that we are thinking about all of the levers that we need to deploy. You can't just buy renewable electricity. You've got to do all of this hard work to go out and achieve your near and long-term climate ambitions. We're very focused on circularity. That's probably my buzzword today. You've heard it a lot, but we see a lot of opportunity in a circular economy. Very focused on advanced mobility and using that to drive sustainability for our stakeholders and users to reduce their use phase emissions. Obviously, collaboration is key. The technology that you are all creating and advancing and showcasing next door is the technology we're looking for to be able to drive our sustainability ambitions, and goes without saying, you all in the scientific community are key. Sustainability is nowhere without being able to unlock some of the strategies that you're all thinking about. So I hope you all have a wonderful conference. Please connect with us after this. We'd love to talk more about some of the things that you're seeing, some of the opportunities that you see in this space. And with that, I will pause and see if we have any questions.